All right, Scott Comer here again with Masters of the Musiverse, and I'm here with composer Haley Woodrow. We're going to walk through some pieces in Haley's catalog, and we're going to start with your grade 4 In Two Places.
Great. Yes. That piece is really special to me. So first of all, though, I think you can see on the screen, I've got this is the Adaptable Works for Band consortium page, and this has been. I mean, it's almost a little website in and of itself that has a lot of the information about what the consortium is and how to join, featured videos and stuff. But if you come down here to included pieces, you can hit into places. You can see what the instrumentation is, the difficulty level, and then I have a page turning score for each piece as well. Now, I will say about Into Places, as far as what was happening with me at the time, I had actually done my undergrad in jazz and loved it. I'm a trumpet player, but I really wanted to do composition. But I didn't end up doing it until a little bit later in life. And I had really only written jazz and also gospel. I worked at an African American church as an orchestra director and arranger. That was the vein that I'd done, but I hadn't really done a lot of classical compositions. So I actually wrote Into Places to get into grad school. So this piece really, I mean, redirected my life. So very special to me. Why it's called Into Places is I had that background in jazz, but I was kind of wanting to transition more to classical. I was also old. I mean, for a grad student, I was 29. So just that adolescence versus adulthood. So just a lot of things filling in two places. So I'm going to play a little bit of this for you. And this is the Florida State University Symphonic Band with conductor Patrick Dunnigan. So that's just a little excerpt of Into Places.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned in your notes that you had a little homage to Holst in there.
Yeah.
And I'm glad for a few reasons. One, because I'm the person that would have been like, that sounds like something. What is that? I can't put my finger on it. So you prevented me from going crazy. Um, any particular reason why Holst? Was it something that was just like in you at the time, or?
Yes, I'm big on score study. So, and honestly, and I mean this so humbly, most of my music that people like, it's because it reminds them of somebody else's music. So they're like, I really like that piece. It sounds like, blah blah blah. So yeah, and everyone does it. Everyone has different influences or even just outright steals. So I don't shy away from it necessarily too much to
Yeah.
borrow, ideas from other composers.
That one won a competition, the 2019 Women's Band Composition Contest. I'm curious about those contests. Like how, like, do you write the piece like in criteria for the contest, or do you just submit something of yours?
It really depends. And so with this one, this piece had already existed for a while, and Pat had made this great recording of it. So it was very well represented. I felt it gave it the best chance, of going into that contest. And it's just a also just very thankful for people like Shannon Shaker that host these contests and give us, the chance to get that feather in our cap if we are able, to have a piece that wins. So but yeah, it really just depends on the contest because a lot of them they want something that hasn't been premiered. well, how are you supposed to have a good recording of something that hasn't been premiered? So, but this one, it wasn't that. And I had a piece that was well represented. So,
Yeah, that's excellent. Anything else on that one, or would you like to shift over to another piece?
no, yeah, I'd like to talk about what happened after grad school. So,
Oh yeah.
yeah, so Into Places was got me into grad school, and that piece has been widely played. So I think it's also helped me become maybe more recognizable as a composer. But after grad school, that's when it sets in that you have to figure out a way to make money. And so I had heard of consortium for the first time. And so about a year, I think after I graduated, I said, you know what, I'm just going to organize my own consortium. I wasn't well known at all yet. And I'm still, hoping to become more well known, but I organized my own consortium rather than having a consortium director just because I was very early on. And I actually did a consortium with 3 different pieces. So I tried to do a grade 1, a grade 2, and a grade 3. So the next piece that I'd like to play is from this group of pieces, A New Day. And the sketches that I wrote for A New Day turned into Mixolydian and stately dance as well for the adaptable consortium. So that was very practical of me, I think, to hold on to those sketches for a future project. And it also gives me hope that with my creative process, I'm not wasting time by considering different options, writing some different music and seeing what works. So this is A New Day. And with A New Day, I was really thinking about a new day in the sense of eternal, for one thing, but also a new day in the sense of having my voice represented as a female composer. So I've been very fortunate that right when I came out of school, the band community, especially, they've been so supportive with representing diverse voices. So I feel like, yes, my music needs to be good, but there's a lot of good music out there that doesn't get played. And I think I've just been really fortunate to, doing my best to write good music, but then having so much interest and support. So that's what a new day is. A new day, a better day, whether it's not a struggle anymore with racism or sexism. And I feel like we're addressing that issue, but we haven't overcome it yet. And so that's what a new day is about. So I'm actually going to play the flex version of this, and here it is. All right, so that's an excerpt. And there is a full band version of that as well that's longer, but that was the adaptable version there.
Yeah, I spent some time this week listening to the full band version, and I got to tell you a story that it reminded me of. So I want to say I think you did a good job of kind of breaking the mold of grade 1 stuff, because it can there's a lot of grade 1 stuff it just sounds so much the same because of the limitations. I imagine it's very difficult to write, for one. And it reminded me of, I heard Philip Sparks speak once, and he was talking to somebody. He was trying to get his composer friends to write more grade 1 music, and so he was literally calling them up on the phone and saying, "Hey, I need you. You need to buy into this, because we need better music for this level of music." And one of his friends said no, because his response was, "It's like trying to write a novel without using the letter R."
Yeah.
so so thank you for writing the piece, but like I'm curious about how difficult of a task it is to write this, like grade 1, or like later we're going to talk about your grade 0.5 piece. um how difficult, how much do you have to dig in deep to write this?
So I do. Okay, so a lot of the time, in the past anyway, when I've had like something I'm trying to do, I guess I'm like kind of a processor with write. Like I like to write my ideas out. Like I have lists everywhere, all over my house. There's just lists everywhere, and like no one's allowed to move my list because there's a method to the chaos. But um, so I actually wrote an article, I think actually two articles that are on my blog, on my website, about writing for grade one band. And so I took the top 14 most played pieces on our Texas PML list. And I made all these like charts and graphs, like what's the most popular length and what's the most popular key and what do the ranges look like and what kind of rhythms are used and all that. So that's really on my website. I think it's just called Grade One Band, that blog. So when I write grade one, I actually go back to my own blog article a lot, and look, because too I have like a score notated, and I contacted each composer, but I had these excerpts from different pieces that I just wrote out into Sibelius. Um, and so that way I can study, the types of harmony they're using really in depth, because they're condensed. So I took their scores and I condensed them into lines to be able to really get into it. So as far as what your question is asking is, what does it take to write a grade one? I really try to treat every level, I mean, just the same. Like I give it the same respect, I give it the same thought. And yeah, there are more boundaries maybe with writing grade one band, but there's a lot you can do. For instance, with A New Day, this piece is in the Mixolydian mode. And so it's an opportunity to introduce A flat, concert A flat, to your students. It widens the range a little bit lower, like in the tuba, for instance. And it's just a new note. Maybe that's going to help bridge them to playing an E flat, playing in three flats, because they saw A flat as an accidental. The key signature is two flats, but they're seeing A flat as an accidental. But hopefully that's going to take them one step towards being able to play in three flats. So yeah, no, I really enjoyed writing that piece, A New Day. So
And next we're going to talk about tapestries. Is that correct?
yes, Tapestries. So Tapestries, first of all, we don't have to get too much into this if you don't want to, Scott, but Tapestries was originally called Melting Pot. And this is one of the things I'm really thankful about with the consortium, is they tell me when I'm doing something, silly. And I didn't know that melting pot, to a lot of people, they associated with that term with forced assimilation. I had no idea it had that kind of connotation. We have a restaurant down here called Melting Pot. It's a fondue place where you throw a bunch of stuff into a pot and make something better. So I just think about eating cheese when I think about the term melting pot. But I got a lot, especially Minnesota directors, saying, that's really not a great term to use with kids, especially. So I changed the name of it to Tapestries for the full version and Tapestry for the adaptable work. And this piece also came from this group of pieces from the consortium that I organized myself right when I was outside of grad school. So Tapestries, the actual piece, is a celebration of different voices. So in terms of like reflecting different nationalities. So the piece at the beginning, to me, it sounds like klezmer music as you get about a minute or so into it. The middle section sounds Spanish, and then the last section is African, with the djembes and the shekere and stuff. So I'm using a F ascending melodic minor scale, and I'm rotating the root. So like in the first part, it's a theme and variations piece. The first time you get the theme, the root is B flat. So it makes it a Lydian dominant scale with a raised fourth and a lowered seventh. And then I shift to F as the root in the Spanish section, and you get a melodic minor scale with that raised seventh that to me sounds very Spanish. And then for the last section, it's the fifth mode of the melodic minor, with the C on the bottom. And what that does is it gives you that lowered sixth scale degree. So I won't bore you with like all the theory and why that's exciting to me to have the lowered sixth, but just know that the piece is really founded on that, with the rotating root, with the same mode. So this celebration of different styles, I again called it melting pot because I thought, oh, just great things all together, making an even greater thing. But I love the title tapestry, because you're talking about a thread that's a certain color, another thread that's a certain color, and together they make up a picture. What I'd like to play is just the tapestry, which is just the African section. And I have a featured video of this, by the way, and this is me up here on the trumpet. It's my husband on the low brass. But I'm going to play the school page turning score video just so you can see the music. And this is tapestry. Tapestry, again, this is one I really felt like we figured out the recording process here. I'm very, very proud of that recording.
Yeah,
So.
it sounds fantastic. I had actually put on my notes because I wasn't sure which one we would listen to, and I said everyone must go check out the adapted version of this. It's stellar.
Thank you, thank you. Yes, we're so proud of it.
How do you go? So you you have the klezmer sound. I use the word flamenco. Would that be fair in that Spanish section?
Yes, absolutely, with the castanets and all that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Um, and the African music. I'm curious. Like, how do you go about? I like giving nods to that type of music with being respectful to it at the same time. Because I feel like that must be a difficult thing to do, to take on.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's a sensitive issue for sure, because African American people are to me are our most vulnerable people in the United States, and certainly with the background in our country of slavery, I always want to be sensitive. But usually, if I talk to like one of my friends that's literally from Africa, like I'm literally in a church group with several ladies from Africa, they're so excited when they hear that I'm using a djembe in one of my compositions. So no, I haven't found a lot of pushback other than just being really careful with the words that I use to describe it.
Yeah.
So
I think too, like when I like look at the djembe playing and in the full like in the full traditional score, you actually have a QR code that links to like djembe demonstrations. It's not djembe for the sake of djembe. Like I've seen that in compositions, they'll throw djembe in there and they'll want to call it African because you throw a djembe in, but it looks like you really use the djembe the way it should be used. Does that make sense?
no, I appreciate your thoroughness in getting in preparing for today. Yes, in my notes, and I should mention too, with Tapestry and A New Day, and in the other one, Fanfare and Song, I included composition outlines as score study resources for the conductor. And I need to get in the habit of doing that with all my pieces. It's very time consuming, but hopefully it helps the director a lot. But that's what Scott's referencing is within those performance notes, composition outline. I have some QR codes or even links where you can go and you can look at a similar groove to what I have in the piece. And that's part of my creative process too, is just really learning from the source, from African drummers, how they play the djembe. In fact, that movie Black Panther, the score is just incredible. I had read the composer actually went and lived in Africa for a while, and he was saying, YouTube videos are just not going to cut it. I'm just not going to get the essence of what they do, in their percussion over there without going there. I'm like so jealous. Like, how fun would that be to
Right.
go over there and learn? So,
If you have Marvel movie money, you can go do that.
yeah, right.
um, so yeah, you mentioned the composition outlines, and I did have in my notes somewhere to like give you 2 big thumbs up for that, because I that's one thing I really enjoy from composers, because I feel like it's maybe the next best thing to having a Zoom session or you coming in live. It gives me some perspective on what you like, your motivation for writing certain things, or like you mentioned before in our conversation with Charles Wise, the things that are going to be an issue. Like you're a savvy composer, this is going to be a problem. So hey, directors, pay attention to this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, yeah. So try to help them. And that's really from being married to a band director. How busy you guys actually are. It's just insane. So I'm always looking, how can I help speed up their process, whether it be score study, rehearsal, what can I do to help? So.
All right. Now we're going to move on to a grade 2 March of the Shadows, which when I asked you about which grade 2 piece, you were like, absolutely March of the Shadows. So there must be something real special about this one. I mean,
What's
it's
really
special in sound.
well, what's really special about March of the Shadows? It's how I met Charles. So if I hadn't met Charles and then hadn't he probably wouldn't. I don't know if he knew my music before, but he probably wouldn't call me for the adaptable thing. So that's why since Charles was on the interview today, I had to include this piece.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So March of the Shadows, it's called that because it's the idea of following. And so I'm a trumpet player. I've taught a lot of trumpet lessons. If you're familiar with Vandercook's solo works for young trumpet players, there's a piece called Centaurus, and I actually borrowed the melody from it because I mistakenly. When I wrote this in 2019, Vandercook had been passed away for 70 years. So I mistakenly thought, oh, Life of the Author plus 70 years must be in the public domain this year. Great. I'm going to use this in my piece. Yeah, I should have researched a little bit further because the Copyright Act that says this, I think, was passed in 1964. And so the piece is written after 1964. That's true, which basically means like nothing is in the public domain yet. But Centaurus's piece, or Vandercook's piece Centaurus, he wrote in like 1920 or something. So it's still under some crazy copyright. Hal Leonard has been super cool with me about using the melody. We've worked out a really reasonable rate. So all this is very above board, and it is in program. It's in my program notes. That I've borrowed this melody. Just FYI. All right, so March of Shadows, idea of following, and also it's a minor march, so just the dark mood to use shadows. This is a really great one to introduce some new techniques and feature your low brass. So at this grade level, we don't see a lot of low brass being featured sometimes around the grade 2. So they're really carrying this piece. And they usually do a great job too. When you throw it to the low brass, they're like, yes, and they do a great job. It introduces glisses in the trombone, a little bit of optional flutter tonguing in the flute and trumpet, and then just dissonant, like a lot of half step rubs. So, and then the other thing that I do want to say about this piece, and actually a New Day too, is if you go on my website and you go to the homepage, I've actually taken as another resource for educators March of the Shadows and A New Day. I took the best lines from the whole piece. And this is the full concert band version, by the way, not the adaptable. So full concert band version. I've taken just the most fun lines, put them all in one part, and then pasted that into all the parts. And then I have backing tracks too. So if your kids go on my website, they can download their PDF and play along with it. And that's another way that they can learn. You can teach the melody basically for the whole piece to everyone at once. So I'd like to listen to the full concert band version of this, if that's okay. And this is Tarleton State. And this piece was actually commissioned by Matthew Hiller. We said this earlier, and Matthew was so cool. He actually worked out a recording session, with the university. So let me play a little bit of this. And while I'm doing that, I'll pull up the score too.
So here's my question after reading your notes and listening to the piece. So what makes something a march?
Yeah, so I think, with any genre, like we were just kind of talking about this with African music, right? Do we let like kind of the listener define that? So, wow, that really sounds African. Well, why? Well, it just sounds African, like a listener. Well, is it the djembes? Is it the melody? Is it like, maybe with African music, is it like the marimba, low flute? So, is it orchestration? Is it certain musical gestures? Is it percussion, like what they're playing? I think to me, that was hard to define. So when I was writing March of the Shadows, like if you read my program notes, I do say, what makes a march a march? Do you have to write like a break strain and follow a certain form? I don't feel that you do. So, I didn't choose to do that in this piece. But I do think you have to, if you're going to call something a certain genre, you are developing an expectation in the listener, in the students, in the director. So there has to be something that evokes the idea of a march. So for me, I think with this piece, it's the percussion for sure. And then also just the types of figures, the way that the quarter notes are played, march length. So I feel like it's a march.
Yeah. I think that's a really good, I've had that conversation with I've got a class that's a survey class of music, and we'll listen to some rap and hip hop, and I'll say, what makes that rap? And working to define those things is a good exercise for all of us, our students and ourselves. Like when you listen to, whatever you like to listen to, what are some of the defining characteristics of that? Now you go to your point 5, Blue Mist, which these have really been chronological for you, right? Like
Yes.
writing. And so this is one of the most recent things you've written.
It is. It's the most recent thing I've written. Yes, Blue Mist. Yes, and so this is a 6-note piece. And it is in 3 flats, but just for directors, it does not use A flat. So you could literally just have your kids blot out the last flat. As a composer, I just had to write the key that it's in, and it is in C minor. But it's a 6-note piece, so they can play it, just B flat, C, D, E flat, F, and G. That's all the notes that are used in this work. You can play it just with flute, clarinet, alto sax, trumpet, and trombone, and then the percussion, of course. And trombones do not play 6th position C. So you'll notice that It doesn't double the euphonium exactly because I avoid that C. I know it's far for young students. I do introduce the dotted quarter note to percussionists only, just to give them also an educational thing to learn. Now, this one, because I literally wrote it last week, I do not have a acoustic recording of it. So it's on the website here. So it's just the MIDI, and I really, really hate to play that on an interview. But how would y'all feel, of me just, I've been telling you kind of autobiographical. So let me just talk about social media a little bit and how
Yeah.
that's impacted being a composer. So I found social media a lot of fun. I really like to put things up on Facebook and see what people say. And it's everyone from respected directors to other composers. Like one time I put a picture of my husband's cinnamon rolls up, and John Mackey was like, you need to bring some of those to Midwest. So um, to my grandma, she'll be like, I don't really know what this is, but it sounds good to me. So I really just love Facebook. It's fun and real, I think in that way. So this piece that I wrote, let me tell you why Facebook saved me here. So I put up a recording of what I was going to use for the melody. And if you read the comments, like if you go to my website or my Facebook page and read the comments, people were like, yeah, that sounds like the hanging tree from the Hunger Games. And I was like, oh my gosh, it really does. So I was asking them about the title, but then I came back and said, I do not want to, be accused of intellectual property theft. So came back with a different melody, and it was interesting too because then it changed the title as well. So let me just play this. This is actually part of my creative process too. I still play my trumpet. I pick up my trumpet and I play a lot. So this is the melody to Blue Mist. And then yes, I'll save you from listening to the other one, the first version of it. That really does sound like the Hunger Games song. We watched the Hunger Games trilogy over Christmas, so there's no doubt that that's what had happened.
Seeped into your brain, huh?
Yes, it did.
Well, so my notes on this, like I really appreciate actually the length of this, like the 1 minute, I think is really great for a 0.5. Because there can be a lot of feeling of accomplishment early on for that young group. Sometimes, you stretch that out too long and it takes a long time to feel like you've accomplished something for young kids. So the minute is much appreciated. I'm planning on, we just got our beginners started a few weeks ago,
Oh,
and I
great.
go into their folders here. So
Oh, cool.
I also appreciate I'm being a trombone player. I think we're all like this, but I'm really picky about the trombone parts when I pick out music. And I get frustrated because at like the grade 2 level, they don't get challenged enough. And so you've answered that, which with March of the Shadows. And then at the grade 1 or the grade half level, I should say, is they have too much movement into sixth position. It's just it's I've not met a fifth grader that can play there.
Yeah, it's too hard. It's too far for their little arms to reach.
Too far, and then they learn bad slide positions. And it takes a while for them to adjust back once they get to be the right size. So I appreciate that that you avoided sixth position in this piece for the trombones.
Yes, my husband's a trombone player, and again was a middle school band director, so I know better.
Well, it was really interesting to me because I've done this before with other composers, and we've done it differently. We've usually done like grade 1, grade 2, kind of like that way. Going through things chronologically was a really interesting way, to kind of see your story as a composer. So I really appreciate that.
That's thanks to I had a really good teacher. I'm going to stop sharing here. I had a really good teacher in my grad, and he that was one of our assignments one week was to talk about our life through our music. And I was like, oh my gosh, that was so much fun.
Yeah.
So thank you for letting me do that today as well.
Yep. Thank you so much for sharing your music with us.
Yes, thank y'all. Thank you for having me, Scott.
Yep, and we'll put lots of links in the description down below this video. So if you feel like you missed something, obviously go back in the video or go down and click a link and check out Haley's information on her website and all the other things that we talked about.